Today, we are going to break down the communication strategies of the one and only Priyanka Chopra. Why? So you can learn the secret to speaking more clearly and confidently no matter what the situation is. Let's jump right in. You know that feeling, right? We've all been there. Someone asks you a question, in a meeting, an interview, even just at a party, and your brain just stalls. All your brilliant ideas suddenly get lost in this sea of ums and uhs. It's a super frustrating feeling, and we're going to call it the ramble trap. But the good news is, today, you're going to learn exactly how to escape it for good. Now, here's what's so interesting. People like Priyanka Chopra, they weren't just born with some kind of magical gift for speaking. Her ability to sound so articulate, so effortlessly, well, it's a skill. And behind that skill is a specific learnable structure, an invisible blueprint, if you will. Think of it like a skeleton for her thoughts that lets her sound persuasive and confident even when she's totally on the spot. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by really understanding the ramble trap. Then we'll uncover Priyanka's blueprint, master the prep skeleton she uses, learn how to add that extra professional polish, and finally, and this is the important part, I'll give you a simple action plan so you can start practicing all of this today. Okay, first things first, let's dive into the problem itself. Why do we fall into this ramble trap? What is actually happening inside our brains when we start stumbling over our words? And here's the absolute key. Stumbling over your words, it's almost never about not having the right vocabulary. It's about a lack of structure. See, when you're put on the spot, our brains try to do two really complex things at the exact same time. Form the thought and say the thought. And that just creates this jumbled mess of ideas. The real secret is to separate your thinking from your speaking, just for a second. So, that brings us right to the solution. If a lack of structure is the problem, well then a clear framework has to be the answer. Let's take a look at the blueprint that gives you that structure. The framework that Priyanka Chopra uses so often is called PREP, and I want you to really hang on to this idea. Think of it as the skeleton of your speech, right? Without a skeleton, your ideas are just a shapeless pile on the floor. But with that skeleton, everything has its place, and your response has strength and a really clear shape. All right, now for the fun part. Let's build this skeleton piece by piece. This is the absolute core of the technique, a 4-step guide that is literally going to transform how you answer any question that comes your way. Okay, so the acronym PREP stands for point, reason, example, and then point again. It's a super simple roadmap that tells your brain exactly what to do next so you never feel lost in your own thoughts. You start with your main point, you explain why you believe it, you give a little story to prove it, and then you just wrap it all up by stating your point one last time. Simple, right? Let's break that down even more. First up, P is for point. This is your direct, one-sentence answer. No fluff, no well, I think, maybe. Just get straight to it. Second, R is for reason. This is where you explain the why behind it all, the logic, the belief system that backs up your point. Third, E for example. Honestly, this is where the magic happens. A short story, a little anecdote, this is what makes your point unforgettable. And finally, that last P is for point again. You just close the loop by restating your main idea, connecting everything back to the original question. And Priyanka is an absolute master of this example step. I mean, when she talks about how her parents valued her opinion, she doesn't just say it. She tells this short, memorable story about asking her dad why her name wasn't on the nameplate outside their house. And what did he do? He changed the nameplate to include her name. See how that just brilliantly illustrates her point? That story is going to stick in your head way more than a simple statement ever could. Okay, so having the prep skeleton is essential. It's the foundation. But it's not quite enough. Now we need to add the style, that professional polish that brings your words to life and makes you sound truly, deeply confident. Just like we saw with Priyanka's nameplate story, facts can be, well, forgettable. But stories are memorable. This is exactly why the E, for example, in the PREP framework is so incredibly powerful. Stories create an emotional connection, and they act kind of like glue for the brain, making your message stick with people long after you finish speaking. Next up, let's talk about using impact vocabulary. You'll notice how Priyanka chooses her words so carefully. So instead of just saying bad things, she'll say setbacks or missteps. Instead of it helped me, she might say something like it provided the data I needed to grow.
Now, these little swaps, they aren't about using big fancy words, not at all. They're about using precise words that make you sound more professional and more in control.
And here's another one of her secrets, the power pause. Before she answers a question, watch her. She often takes this brief, deliberate pause. She'll listen, she might nod, and she takes a breath. On the outside, this just projects immense confidence. But on the inside, it's giving her brain that crucial moment to load up that prep skeleton so she knows exactly what she's going to say. Seriously, don't be afraid of silence. A pause of just 3 seconds might feel like an eternity to you, but to your audience, it just looks like you're thoughtful and composed. It's your secret weapon for gathering your thoughts before you even say a single word. Look, I don't want you to just watch this and think, that was interesting. I want you to be able to actually use it. So here is a simple, actionable plan to go from theory to practice and start mastering this skill right away. Here's your workflow. For week 1, just start small. Practice answering simple, low-stakes questions in your head using prep. Then level up. Start writing down prep answers for common professional questions. Tell me about yourself, that kind of thing. For week 3, become an active listener. When you watch interviews, try to spot the prep framework. I promise you'll start seeing it everywhere. And finally, record yourself answering just 1 question a day. It's going to feel a little weird at first, but trust me, it is the absolute fastest way to improve. The ability to articulate your thoughts clearly is one of the most powerful skills you can possibly develop. And remember, it's not magic, it's a skill. And like any skill, you can build it with practice. So my challenge to you is this. What is the very first question you're going to answer using the prep framework? Don't wait, go ahead and start today.